Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cass. Here we like to talk about all things books, so if that sounds good to you, hit subscribe below and stick around. We are going to go through all of the books that I read in May and whether or not you should read them. Before I get into reviews, I just kind of wanted to go over my stats. I did a TBR video and I had a total of 12 books on my TBR. So I read a total of 14 books last month. I DNF'd one of them, so I completed 13 books. However, not all of those books were on my TBR. I made a grave mistake when I was doing my TBR, and I forgot to take into account all of the new releases that were coming out in May. There were so many new releases that I was anticipating, and I didn't include them in my TBR video. So then when they came out, I kept ditching my TBR to read the new releases that I was dying to read. And because of that, I did not get through all of my TBR. So I read a total of 7 books off my TBR. One of them was a DNF. And I read 6 new releases. And then one just other random book that I got from the library. So about 50% of my TBR, which wasn't, great, but it's not terrible either. I mean, 7 books off of it, not too shabby. Let's get into it. I'm just going to go through them in the order that I read them. So the first book that I read in the month of May was Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McCoughney. This is a new author for me. I'd heard of her before, but I hadn't read any of her books, so this was my first book by her. And this book takes place on an island, like a remote island down by Antarctica, where they are collecting seeds from every plant or life form that exists on the earth in case there is a catastrophic event and they have to start over. This takes place in the future. So we have a father living on the island who has 3 children. He is in charge of maintaining the seed bank. That's what they call it, where they collect all of the seeds. Right now, they are the only ones on the island, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and no one would come to that island unless they had a reason to. And while they are there, there's a boat wreckage, and this woman is in the water, and one of the kids rescues her. They bring her on shore, they take her home, and they kind of nurse her back to health. When she wakes up, they have questions for her, like, what are you doing here? Nobody comes here unless they know where they're going. This woman has a story, but you get the sense that there's more to it than what she's telling them. So you have the family that's living there on the island, and then the woman's story. And we're going back and forth between POVs, and also we're going back and forth on a dual timeline. We're doing flashbacks for these characters. And so we're kind of slowly piecing together both of their pasts, why their lives are intersecting now. And it's very interesting. I don't want to say too much more because I went into it pretty blind, and I feel like that was the best way to go into it. I had a really good experience, but it has very much this I don't know if you ever watched the TV show Lost, but it kind of has those vibes of it's almost as if the island is a character in and of itself, and the sea. And then we have the woman and the family, and there's a lot of secrets to be uncovered. There's a lot of character development, and I really, really liked this book. There is also a plot, but we're also very much learning about the characters, and there's a mystery that unfolds as we go. So if that sounds interesting to you, I would highly recommend the book. I rated it a 4.5 because, objectively, it's a 5-star book. It's very well written, and I loved her writing. I loved her writing so much so that I picked up another book of hers, which I'll get to in a minute. I just didn't get that 5-star feeling at the end, but it was an excellent book. 4.5. I highly recommend. This author has a lot of social commentary. It's very clear that the author is exploring different questions of this degree of existentialism, taking a look at traditional gender roles, thinking about climate change and the effect that humans have on nature, the importance of community, as well as all of the ways that we try to protect ourselves, not just physically, but also emotionally, spiritually, how that affects everything around us. And I think that if I had to sum up the book in one statement, I would say that it asks the question, what is the meaning of life? And is it worth it to love in this life? So I really, really loved it. And like I said, it made me want to check out her other books. Following this book, I put her other books on hold, and I did get one of them. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But the next book I read in May was The Nature of Fragile Things. This is a historical fiction book, and this was a new to me author. I'd heard so many good things about her, but I had never read any of her books. I'm so glad that I picked up this one because it takes place in historical San Francisco during the major earthquake, early 1900s. And I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and so it was really fun to have that as the setting and the backdrop because I love San Francisco and I'm very familiar with the city. So I loved the setting of it. In this book, we have a historical accurate setting of 1906 in San Francisco when the great earthquake and fires happened in the city, but the story is fictional. So we have Sophie, who is from Ireland and has immigrated to the US, and she's living in New York, and she answers a mail order bride ad for Martin Hawking, who lives in San Francisco and has a daughter, and says, I'm a widower and I need to get remarried. I'm looking for someone who wants to be a mother to my daughter, and you'll be very well taken care of. So she agrees to marry him based on a couple of letters and an exchange of photos, simply just to be able to recognize each other at the train station. So he brings her out to San Francisco, and they immediately get married. Like, she steps off the train and they go get married. And she hasn't even met his daughter yet. But she meets the daughter, she falls in love with this little girl and loves being a mother. But Martin is not around a lot, and he's not very open, and he doesn't share a whole lot about himself or about his life. There just seems to be like a lot of mystery and secrecy. You know, he's very closed off. And so she's navigating this new marriage. She's navigating this relationship with this girl who is really in her shell, and she's like slowly trying to get her to come out of her shell, you know, because she's lost her mother and her dad is not very affectionate. As the story unfolds, we start to suspect that characters in the book are not who we thought they were, and we're trying to get to the bottom of this mystery. I really love this book. I loved learning more about the earthquake and the fires of 1906. It felt very realistic to me. I could imagine living there during that time. I could imagine the people. And it gave me a little bit of insight into what people must have experienced going through all of that. I think one of the themes that I really loved about the book was we women have to support each other. Women have to support women. Yes, we may get married, we may fall in love. You know, men play an important role in our lives, but ultimately we women have to stick together. And I really love that theme. I love the way the story unfolded. There's definitely a mystery element to it, so it keeps you very interested throughout the story. And although there is some character development, I would say this is more a plot-forward story, though there's a lot of character development. It did not give me that 5-star feeling, but I really loved it and thought it was such a fantastic book. So I rated it 4.75, and I would definitely recommend it if it sounds interesting to you. And after that, I got from the library Migrations, which was one of the books I put on hold of Charlotte McCoughney's after reading Wild Dark Shore. So I immediately picked up Migrations because I was very anxious to read another one of her books. It did not disappoint. This book also takes place in the future, in a like dystopian sci-fi type of future where, again, there's devastation from climate change, from the effects of human on the world. I can tell that nature and climate change is very important to this author. It's a very unique setting, and it took me a minute to get into, but I ended up really loving it and eventually feeling so immersed in the world in that book. We're following our female main character who, she's like a scientist. She is studying these birds that are about to go extinct, and she's kind of obsessed with them. She wants to follow these birds' last migration because There's food running out all over the world. Animals are dying. Even the fish are becoming extinct. And so humans are having a hard time finding food because a lot of the communities that rely on fishing are coming up empty-handed as they go out to fish. These birds, they eat fish. And she is certain that if she can follow these birds, she will be able to locate where there is more fish and more wildlife in the world, and specifically in the sea. The birds leave from Ireland and fly all the way down to the South Pole and then back around and like along the African coast and back up to Ireland every year. And it's in miles. It's the longest migration of any bird. And it's pretty extraordinary. So the only problem is she has no way to follow these birds. She has been able to track some down and attach trackers to them, but she doesn't have a way to follow them. She doesn't have a boat, and something happened with her resources from the science lab and stuff that has prevented her from being able to finish pursuing this project. And we kind of learn more about that as we go. And so she finally convinces this boat of fishermen to take her with them and promises them, if you take me with you, I can track these birds on their migration. They will show us where the fish are. They will show us, and I promise you, you will come back with fish. After a lot of back and forth, she ends up on the ship. So we're following this journey of this woman and all of these sailors, all these fishermen who have all different backgrounds. Some of them are married and have children. Some of them are single. They all have different histories. I loved the characters in this book. You just end up really becoming attached to some of them. There's really this like found family element happening on the boat, and they become really close because they are relying on each other every day to stay safe in the sea. And ultimately this crew is putting their faith in this woman to help them bring home food and feed their families and make a living. So that's the setup. We're following them, and of course lots of things happen. Again, we're having flashbacks. We are getting backstories for different characters and all of the obstacles they encounter as they are following this migration. That's all I'll share. But I wasn't quite sure where the book was going. I knew nothing about it. I just knew that I wanted to read more of this author's work. I went into it blindly and willingly and excitedly. And at first I was kind of like, I don't know if this is what I was expecting. I don't know if I'm gonna like this, but I love the author's writing. I love the examination she's doing socially of different issues that we have in society. And eventually I was completely immersed and completely invested in this book. The ending is one of the best endings to a book ever. I cried. I also loved it. And I rated it 5 stars. So that was my first 5-star book of the month. I loved it. And I cannot wait to read her other book, which is, I think, When We Were Wolves. Anyway, I have that on hold, and I'm really excited to read that either this month or next month when I get it. So I can't recommend that book enough. That's definitely going to be one of my top books of this year. After that, I picked up Fearless. That was one of the new releases that I did not account for. And that is the 4th and final book in the Powerless series. I was looking forward to this book and looking forward to finishing the series. Overall, this series, I've really enjoyed it. It's just been it's a fun YA romantasy. It's not one that you have to think too hard about. I would actually say out of all of the books, Fearless was the most complex. Had the most complex elements of like having to think and make sense of certain things. Overall, the book and this series as a whole is very easy to follow, and it's just a good time. It's not one of my favorite series of all times. There's definitely better romantasies out there in my opinion, but I enjoy it. I own the book. I am including this book in a reading vlog, so I won't say too much else about it, except that I did enjoy it and I rated it 4.25. Honestly, I think my favorite book in the series is Powerful, which was like a novella that followed some side characters. I actually really loved that story. I think that was my favorite book out of all of them. But as a whole, I enjoyed the series. I would recommend it. And it's a good time. It's a good time. After that, I picked up another new release, which is The Shield of Sparrows. Honestly, this was like clickbait. Like, this was like a cover buy for me. I simply saw the book. It's beautiful. It's stunning. If you've seen the first print hardcover, it has the most gorgeous sprayed edges. I'll insert a picture here if I can. And so mainly, I was just excited. It has been a while. I've kind of been in this, as you saw, like this literary fiction, historical fiction mode, reading more serious books. And after reading Fearless, I was excited to read like more romantasy and get back into my fantasy stuff. Plus, I saw that this was Devney's first, like this was her debut into adult fantasy or romantasy, but it's not her first novel. She's a romance author, and I haven't read any of her other books, but a lot of other booktubers that I follow do read her other romance books and have enjoyed them. So I knew she had some credibility, at least as far as the romance goes, and I just had to read the book and find out for myself. I know there are a lot of mixed opinions about this book, but I loved it. I loved this book. I had such a great time. I know some people didn't like the main character, but I felt like she made sense for the situation she was in and the way that she was raised. I didn't feel like, I don't know, I felt like it made sense. It didn't bother me. I would also keep in mind that this is more of like a new adult fantasy, so the characters are still pretty young. You know, I think our main character is 17 or 18. So there is a law amongst all of the countries, the lands, I don't remember what they call them. Basically between borders, there's all these different nations with borders that are near each other, and they have an agreement called the Shield of Sparrows, where the kingdoms basically form marriages of alliance. At certain points, a kingdom gives one of their daughters to marry the prince of another land, and they call them Sparrows. And it's a shield of sparrows because it protects all of these nations from fighting each other. It kind of keeps the peace. It's basically like a shield of peace through arranged marriages. So our main character's sister has been groomed her whole life to be the sparrow. And they know who she is supposed to marry. And they have, prepped her for this. And essentially, they think that this nation is betraying everyone. And they want her to go in and be a spy. And so they've trained her to be his wife, to go in to be a spy for their kingdom, to be able to report back to them because they think they're up to no good. Our main character is supposed to marry one of the generals in the king's army. She's actually supposed to get married that day, but we see right from the very beginning that she's not super excited about getting married. She's kind of a free spirit. She isn't really, they don't pay that much attention to her. And right at the very beginning of the book, she comes home from an adventure, and the prince and his entourage have arrived from the kingdom where her sister is supposed to get married. And this is supposed to be the first time that her sister meets her betrothed. And while they are doing the introduction, the prince basically says, "No, this is not the daughter I want. I want this daughter." So our female main character ends up on a boat with this prince who has chosen her as his betrothed and is immediately taking her back to his kingdom. This was not part of the plan. This was never part of the plan. And now her family is scrambling and telling her what she needs to do, that she needs to spy. She has no training, nothing. Not only that, but this prince, he won't even talk to her. He doesn't even talk. One of his hands, who's called the Guardian, does all of his communicating for him. And so she brings a couple of ladies' maids with her, and she's on this boat sailing to their kingdom, and she's trying to figure out what the heck she's going to do and how she's going to make this all work. This book had a storyline that I haven't read before or recently. It had a world that was unique. It felt different to me. I don't want to give it away, but there's a setting definitely, like once they get to the kingdom where they're staying, I thought was so unique and different and fun. It just felt really refreshing to me. I loved the storyline. There were some reveals, and I was able to guess some of them, but not all of them. And I really had a good time. And then it ended on a huge cliffhanger that left me so intrigued for the next book. And I had a really good time, you guys. So I personally loved it, and I gave it 5 stars. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about it. I know there's been a lot of hype, and sometimes that ruins a book, but I did read it pretty immediately. Like, I think I read it within a couple of days of it coming out. So before there was a whole lot of opinions out about it. I loved it, and everyone I've recommended it to so far also really loved it. So to each their own. Okay, a quick pause. I know I look so cute, but until now, I didn't have my mic plugged in, so get ready. It's about to change. Let's talk about My Friends by Fredrik Backman. This was one of the most anticipated reads of the entire year for me. Fredrik Backman is one of my favorite authors of all time, top tier, like top 3 favorite authors ever. I've read every single book he's ever written, so the second I could get my hands on this book, I picked it up. Even had a little bit of regret afterwards, like I just gobbled up the book so quickly, and then I was like, there's nothing else to read of his. Now I have to wait however many years again for him to write another book. But it was worth it. I loved this book. We are following a young girl who's a delinquent who is an orphan, and she's always getting into trouble, but she has no family and really like nothing going for her, except that she is really good at art. She loves art. It's her passion. And it started with a painting by this artist that meant something to her. She's always kept that idea in her. It's kind of kept her going through all of the hard times in her life. And this painting comes for a showing in her town. And it's this like fancy, gallery type of situation. People dressed up and hors d'oeuvres and drinking and champagne, It's not her element. But all she's ever wanted was to see this painting in person with her own eyes. So she sneaks into the event, drinks in this painting. She loves it, and it's clear that she knows more about this painting than anybody else that's there. I believe they're actually auctioning it off. So, people are talking about the painting, and she's correcting them. And pretty soon people are like, why is this girl here? And they kick her out. She's kind of coming down from this moment that she's waited for her whole life. She's got some spray paint, and she goes in the alley behind this building. I think it's a church where they're showing the painting, and she starts painting something artistic on the wall. And she realizes that there's this sickly man sitting in the alley by her. And at first it scares her, but eventually she starts to talk to him and finds out that they have a love of art in common. Eventually the cops come, and he leaves, and she leaves, and the next day, Ted shows up. He's very OCD, germophobic, kind of prim and proper, who is reserved on the outside. He shows up. He says, that man in the alley that you were talking to, that was so-and-so, who is the artist of that painting, that famous painting. And she realizes that she was sitting there talking about the painting with the artist who painted it, and it's this painting that meant so much to her. You guys, it's so hard for me to describe these books and not give so much detail. I really need to work on my summaries. Okay, you guys, I have tried to summarize My Friends like 3 times now, and I just can't do it. It's so complex. I can't figure out how to do it without giving away spoilers and just to like encompass the complexity of this book in a short synopsis. I just don't feel like I can do it justice. So I'm just going to read you the description that is on the blurb that is on the inside of the book, or, on Goodreads. So most people don't even notice them. 3 tiny figures sitting at the end of a long pier in the corner of one of the most famous paintings in the world. Most people think it's just a depiction of a wide expanse of sea, but Louisa, soon to be 18 years old and an aspiring artist herself, knows otherwise. She is determined to find out the story behind these 3 enigmatic figures. That's our main female character. Then, more than 2 decades before, in a distant seaside town, a group of teenagers find refuge from their bruising home lives by spending long summer days on an abandoned pier, telling silly jokes, sharing secrets, and committing small acts of rebellion. These lost souls find in each other a reason to get up every morning, a reason to dream, and a reason to love. Out of that summer emerges this transcendent work, which is the painting. This painting unexpectedly ends up in Louisa's care, and she embarks on a surprise-filled cross-country journey to discover how the painting came to be and what to do with it. The closer she gets to the painting's birthplace, the more anxious she becomes about what she'll find. Louisa's complicated life is proof that happy endings are sometimes possible, but they don't always take the form that we expect them to. I don't know how to explain this book better. It is definitely a story of past and present. We have a dual timeline, and the ways in which Louisa, who is about to turn 18, has so much in common with those teenagers that are in the painting. And we're going back in time and seeing those teenagers. And we're learning the history of this painting and the history of those friends from Ted, who is our main male character, who's now in his 40s. He and Louisa have crossed paths due to unpredictable events, and they couldn't be more different. But through discussing the painting, how it came to be, and why it was left in her care, they both learn a lot about themselves, about life, about love. It's basically a love story about friendship, about platonic love, about how important our childhood friends can be, about what it's like to grow up in a dysfunctional, like toxic environment, how that affects you. I really can't do this book justice in a synopsis. Please just pick it up. It is so good. If you've read any of his other books and you enjoyed them, then pick it up. It is fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. I cried. I laughed. He worked his magic, like always. It was just so great. And it was the right book at the right time for me. I absolutely loved it. I'm losing my light here. Okay. Next, I read Our Infinite Fates, which was another new release that I snagged up as soon as I could. I had heard so many good things about it. It's been trending on BookTok, Bookstagram, BookTube, and I wanted to read it. So the premise of the book is that we have these 2 fated lovers who are reincarnated life after life after life, and for thousands of years. And we're following them across a large span of time through many, many lifetimes. In each lifetime, they fall in love. They are fated to fall in love, but they are also fated to die, because in every lifetime, they take a different form. They can even be a different gender, different places in the world. They're just different. They're reincarnated every time into some other completely different body. And even though they're in a new setting and in a new body, they remember their past life. And the girl knows that there's this guy, that she has a strong connection to him, that she ends up falling in love with him, but she also knows that he always ends up killing her before her 18th birthday. And so in every lifetime, she's kind of on edge. She's trying to figure out who will be, like, which person in her life is her fated mate, because he's also hiding in a different body that she can't recognize in every lifetime. So they're always trying to find each other. They know that each other is there, but they don't know what shape or form they're taking. He's always trying to hunt her down, and she's always trying to evade him because she knows that once he finds her, he's going to kill her. She always ends up dead before her 18th birthday, and then he dies immediately after. So their relationship not only is fated for love, but it's also cursed in death. And in this lifetime, she has decided she likes this life. She loves the family she's with. She does not want to die when she turns 18. And she is going to make sure that this time it goes differently. And so she is really on the hunt, looking for, trying to figure out, and always like second guessing the people in her life and whether or not they are the fated mate. But every time her mate finds her, she inevitably falls in love. She feels this deep tie to him. She feels this undeniable connection with him. At the same time, she knows he's going to kill her, and it doesn't make sense to her, and she wants answers. So this is a mystery that we're kind of unraveling. We're with the female main character from her point of view, trying to figure out what this is all about, why this keeps happening, what the whole point is, and trying to live past her 18th birthday this time. I loved the premise of this book. I think it had so much potential. I loved the author's writing. Her writing was stunning. The prose and the poetry that is in this book, I marked up so many different, I annotated the crap out of this book. There are so many different passages that were just stunning. Unfortunately, it did have a very YA or new adult feel to it. I don't know if that's why, but the story just wasn't as long and as complex as I wanted it to be. I wanted more from it. So I felt very conflicted when the book ended. I also didn't love how it ended. I felt like it ended too abruptly. I felt like I was just starting to become really invested in their relationship and in their story, and then it was over. And that definitely affected my rating. So I felt very conflicted in rating this book because what I would rate the story and what I would rate the writing are two very different scores. Because I loved the writing so much, and like I will keep the book just because of the prose and the passages that are in there, I gave it a 4-star. But story-wise, I would say that it's probably more of like a 3-star. But since I would actually probably give the writing 5 stars. So I kind of figured like 3-star for the story, 5-star for the writing. I'm going to make it a 4-star. So that's kind of how I came up with my rating. It wasn't terrible. It was a good book. I just wanted more, and I feel like I just feel let down. I had high expectations based on the premise and what I'd been hearing. Maybe that's why. Maybe, I really try not to go into books with expectations, but I also felt surprised by the author's beautiful prose. So do with that what you will. The next book I picked up was Silver Elite, another new release. And I had heard good things about this book. I picked it up pretty quickly after it was released. So again, I did get to read it before there were a whole lot of reviews and opinions out there. But this book takes place this is like a sci-fi dystopian setting. It takes place in a very dystopian world with scientific elements. And like a classical, like fantasy or sci-fi, we have people who are like normal humans and people who have magic. I call it something else in the book, but it's that same old, like the regular people and the magic people, this prejudice against one another. Our female main character has magic, but she's been hiding in plain sight as a human. And it's a very dangerous thing. People can't find out that she has powers. Her life would be at risk. She lives with her uncle, who basically adopted her when she was 8 years old when her parents died. She can't really remember that much about her parents. Her uncle is the only kind of parent that she's ever known, and he taught her how to use her powers. He also had magic and was hiding in plain sight. And right at the very beginning of the book, her uncle is killed. So this is not a spoiler, but her uncle is killed, and some things happen that kind of start to make her suspicious to the law enforcement that's in the area, who are hunting down the magical people. The magic wielding. They suspect that she has magic, but she won't confess to it. They also suspect that she knew that her uncle had magic, but she won't confess to that. And she swears up and down that she didn't know. And they're like, how would he have been able to hide that from you all of this time? You lived with him. But she knows that if she fesses up to it, they will just kill her. They will kill her. They don't quite believe her though. And so they take her back to their military academy where they train the elite. And the highest level you can become is a silver elite. So that's where the title of the book comes from. They say, okay, fine, you didn't know, but now we don't know if we can trust you. So we are going to train you to be in our military. 1, so they can keep a close eye on her. 2, because if she really didn't know and she really is against magic, the elite are in charge of eliminating people with magic. And so in bringing her into their military, she would either out herself or prove loyalty to them, because she would either have to kill the very people that she is a part of, the magical people. She would have to eliminate them. Or she would reveal herself as being magical, and then they would know what to do with her. So we are in a training military academy setting. It's very competitive. So not only is she now hiding with the enemy, but she also has to hide her magic, which she still doesn't have full control over. And she's getting put in these new situations, and it's very stressful because her magic might come out unexpectedly. But she's under the elite's surveillance constantly, so she can't mess up because there's people all around her that will notice if she has magic and would out her. And basically, if they find any traitors, like any people with magic training in the elite, they kill them on sight. They're gone. And so it's a very stressful situation. This has got an enemies to lovers vibe to it, because immediately upon entering the elite program, one of the commanders, there's like a lot of chemistry and contention between them. She doesn't trust him because he's an enemy, and he doesn't trust her because he suspects that she's an enemy. So there's all this kind of contention between them, but it's also quite obvious that there is some chemistry between them as well. So the story evolves from there. This book is extremely fast-paced. I was definitely giggling at points and like kind of kicking and being a schoolgirl. I really loved the banter between them. I loved the storyline. I loved the plot. All in all, this book was just excellent. I couldn't put it down. I read it in less than 24 hours. And so, of course, I gave it 5 stars. I would recommend it. I would really recommend it. It's a good time. And I'm really curious to see where this series is going because it ended on a cliffhanger, pretty big cliffhanger, that makes you kind of second guess everything you just read. And so now I need book number 2. After all of those books, I was on a high. My brain needed a break because I was reading really intense books. Like My Friends was really heavy hitting. And then I went into a fantasy world and then a sci-fi world that were complex and lots going on and lots of details to remember. And my brain, I needed something that wasn't going to take so much out of my head. So I picked up After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's one of her older books, like one of the first books that she released. I definitely could tell throughout reading it that she has matured a lot as a writer. I could tell that her writing has evolved over time, but it was still good. It was still very classic Taylor Jenkins Reid. And the premise of that book is that we have a married couple who is like 9 or 10 years into their marriage, and they're having a lot of problems. And they have a non-traditional idea of figuring out if they want to be together or if they're going to get divorced. And they decide that they're going to separate for an entire year. No communication, no nothing, but they're not getting divorced. They're just going to separate. They're going to go their separate ways, live their lives as if they're single and divorced. And then at the end of that 1 year, they're going to touch base again and decide whether they want to work things out or whether they want to go their separate ways. So this is a dual timeline. We're going between what's happening in their lives right now as they are separated, but also flashing back to different points throughout their entire relationship and why they ended up together. I'm not going to say it was a light book because it definitely covers, relationships and love and the complexity of marriage and divorce and also like family dynamics, but it was very easy to follow. There were some really beautiful points that she made. It's a Taylor Jenkins Reid book. I love her. I think I have one more book on my backlist of hers to read, and then I will be completely caught up on all of her books. But yeah, it was a solid 4-star book. I gave it 4 stars, and I would recommend it, especially if you like contemporary romance. I read The Wind Weaver, which was another fantasy romantasy book, new release. Take 3. I'm really not good at this, you guys. I just want to yap and yap. But we could be here all day if I really said as much as I wanted to about each book. So I'm going to try to trim it down. The Wind Weaver takes place on a continent where Fae used to live and magic reigned, and the humans did not want magic on their continent any longer. And there's been lots of war over time to get rid of magic. And what remains now are halflings that are, I think, essentially half fae, half human. So they have magic, and they're trying to weed out all of these halflings and execute them because they don't want any inkling of magic on their continent. So we start out in the book with Rhea, our main female character. She's about to be executed. Someone has found her. She's a halfling. She's about to be hung. This small battalion of soldiers with a leader named Commander Scythe. How do you say it? I don't know. Anyway, he shows up and he kills the man who was going to execute her. And now they take Rhea and they say, we have to go north. Basically, we're going to deliver you to the kingdom up north. So now she went from almost being executed to now being captive by this group of men, and they start their journey headed up to the Northlands. As they go, it's revealed to her that they know that she has powers, that she's not a prisoner. They were on a mission to find her and bring her back to the Northlands, but they won't tell her why. Rhea has worked her whole life to suppress her magic because it was forbidden, and if anyone found out, they would kill her. And so she's not familiar with her magic, and therefore she cannot control it. On this journey, her magic starts to kind of leak out in different situations. And the commander, whose name is Penn, we later find out, he says, you've got to learn how to control your magic. I'll try to help you. I can train you. And she's like, why? But she also really has nowhere else to go. If she left them, she would be on her own, and she would be hunted down by other people who wanted to execute her. So she kind of reluctantly continues on this journey with them. And Pen begins to help her train her magic, which is wind weaving. She's a wind weaver, and she's not very good at it at first. And there's a lot of accidents and a lot of things happen. Pretty early on, you can sense that there's chemistry between Rhea and Pen. But, you know, she feels like she doesn't know them. She doesn't trust them. And the commander, he is very closed off. He is very broody. He has a history and he won't open up his heart to anybody. But he's in a position now where a lot of things are on the line and he really, really needs Rhea and needs Rhea's magic to save the kingdom. And so he's trying to help her develop her magic, but also is trying not to get too attached. So that's kind of the premise of the story. We have Rhea, who's kind of like naive and has been hiding her whole life, doesn't have a family, doesn't know how to control her magic, is very distrusting because of all of the prejudice against halflings. And then we have Pen, who is like this big, tough commander guy who has like a mushy heart inside, but he doesn't want to show that to anybody. He doesn't want to expose it. And then there's a forbidden nature to it because they come from two different kingdoms. She's from the south, he's from the north, and I believe there's 4 kingdoms total. At this point, Rhea is certain that she's just headed right into enemies' hands, and she's not sure that anything good is going to come of it. This book really surprised me. I really enjoyed it. There's definitely a slow burn romance, which I love. There's a lot of tension in there. Also, a lot of character development. I would say that this definitely leans more towards character development than plot, although there is plot. And it does speed up at the end. I think it does get a little slow in the middle, which is why I didn't give it 5 stars. There were some sluggish areas, but overall, really enjoyed the book. I will definitely be picking up book number 2. I really liked Rhea and I really liked Pen, and I liked their relationship. I like the tension that's between them. I like the character development that's happening. I like the slow burn, and I would recommend it. So I ended up giving this book 4.5 just because of the pacing issues. But otherwise, I really liked it, and I will be picking up the second book. Next, I picked up Rewind It Back, which is the final book in the Windy City series, which is a set of contemporary romances, sports romances in Chicago. And in each book, we follow a different professional sports player. We have hockey players, baseball players, and basketball players. I think those are the 3. And these are interconnected standalones, so you don't have to read them in order, but I would recommend reading them in order just to avoid any kind of spoilers, and because with each book you get to know the characters more and they show up in the subsequent books, and I think it just makes for an overall better experience. So Rewind It Back is a best friends to lovers second chance romance. So we have Rio, who was one of my favorite characters, like side characters in the other books. So I was really excited that he was the main character in this book. He's a professional hockey player in Chicago, but he didn't grow up there. He's always going out on dates, but he's never in a relationship. And everyone in his circle assumes that he's just a bachelor who is struggling to like fall in love and settle down and just kind of wants to live that bachelor life. But what we find out is that he actually is not that at all. He had a childhood, best friend who he fell in love with when they were young, and they were together, up until college, and it ended badly and broke his heart, and he just never got over it. And he's living in this big house out in suburbia because he really wants to find someone and get married and have a family and kind of settle down and live the life that the rest of his friends in his group are kind of living. He wants to settle down, but he just hasn't been able to find the right person, and he's very picky and he's very cautious about his heart. So there's a woman next door to him that's like the little sister of another sports guy, and they're friends, but nothing, there's like no chemistry. They don't hang out all the time or anything. And she's getting a new roommate. And who might that new roommate be? Well, it ends up being his old lost love from his childhood. And they haven't seen each other in 6 years. You find out from the book, like, how she ends up living next door to him and completely unknown. She knew that he is in Chicago playing for his sports team, but she had no idea that he lived next door to the house that she was about to move into. And so now, they ended on bad terms. They both were completely brokenhearted, and they haven't spoken in 6 years, kind of have hard feelings, and both of them are quite shocked that the other one is living next door. And it's not ideal, but it's also something they can't easily get out of because Hallie, who's the girl, she really needs this rental. She really needs this opportunity to live with the neighbor. And it's kind of the only thing that works for her right now. And of course, he owns his house and he's not going anywhere right away. And so they kind of make a truce and kind of say, like, I'll stay out of your way, you stay out of my way. Of course, that doesn't happen. Of course, the past comes up and they start to engage and there's still feelings there and whatnot. There's a lot of spice in it. It was really good. I really like how she ended the series, but it's not my favorite of it. I really love the Rhodes Brothers, which is in the 3rd and 4th books, which is Caught Up and Play Along. I think Play Along is my favorite out of all of them. But it was really good. I gave it 4 stars and I would recommend the series. And I don't read a lot of contemporary romance, but I did enjoy this one. There's definitely a found family aspect to it, and I really, really enjoyed that. Plus all of the main characters in the book, who are all professional sports players, they're really good guys. And I really appreciate books that show the good guys, because there's enough bad ones out there. And I just appreciate seeing men in books who are good, just all around good guys, Plus, they definitely have a bromance going on within that found family. And I really like that dynamic. It's really nice to see because I don't think we see enough of male friendships like that. Anyway, I gave that a solid 4 stars. And then after that, I picked up Wild Scottish Night, basically a rom-com with magical realism. We have a girl who, her grandfather died. He was rich, very wealthy. And in his will, he left her ownership of a castle in Scotland that she didn't even know existed. She takes a trip to go check out this castle that she thinks is just going to be ruins. She wants to kind of see what the land looks like and figure out what she's going to do with it. And she shows up and finds out, lo and behold, this is a full running castle, like a hotel running out of it. There's businesses in town, and castle is a business. It's an archaeological site, but it's also a business. And they've been expecting her, but she doesn't know it. So she shows up and she knows nothing about this castle, nothing about running this business. And it's in this town of locals who are very close. It's definitely the small town, tight-knit, group of people. He's very protective of this castle. He really believes in what he's doing and in the history of the castle. And he's very skeptical of her coming in and making changes and possibly, telling him what to do with it. And so of course there's tension there, but also chemistry, a romance ends up developing between them. And there is definitely elements of magical realism in it. The story goes from there. This is a 3-star book for me. It's not my typical read. I really enjoyed it. It's just a fluff book for me though. So 3 stars, a solid, good read. I would recommend it if it's your thing. It's not overly complex. I laughed. It was funny. It was a good rom-com. It definitely falls into the rom-com genre with magical realism. It takes place in Scotland. I listened to the book, and so the narrators used a Scottish accent, which was really fun. Anyway, if that sounds up your alley, I recommend it. I'm probably not going to remember it in a couple of weeks, but it was a good time. The next book I read was the new release by Jessa Hastings, who's the author of Magnolia Parks, which took me by complete surprise, but I loved that series. That's a 5-star series for me. And she just released a standalone book called The Conditions of Will, which does take place in the Magnolia Parks universe, but it's very loosely connected. So you don't have to read that series in order to read this book. But there is a very, a very small connection. We're following Georgia, or Gigi, who was sent away to Europe for boarding school when she was a teenager. Now she's an adult. Her father has passed away, and she's going home to see her family and go to the funeral and listen to the reading of the will. And it's very complex because she has really mixed feelings towards her family because they sent her away. She has 3 siblings who live in the area, and the only one she really talks to is her younger brother because he's gay, and their family kind of ostracized him as well. And so Oliver and Gigi, they kind of have stuck together and continue to stay in touch, but they don't really get along with their older brother and sister. And so it's kind of like the older brother and sister get along, and then the younger brother and sister get along. But like, they're the golden children and they're the like black sheep. So she hasn't seen her family all together like this in a very long time. And she shows up and immediately runs into this dreamboat guy who she presumes is Oliver's gay partner. So she starts like complimenting him and like swooning over him, thinking he's this gay guy, like no big deal. And come to find out, he's not gay. He's just Oliver's AA sobriety sponsor. Oliver's dealt with addiction his whole life and is coming home to this complex situation as well, and needed the support of his sponsor. And so he came with him, his name is Sam. So Sam comes with him. Sam is from Australia, so he has an Australian accent, and he's an Aussie. And I listened to this book and read it. I tandem read it. So I annotated it while I listened to the book. Given that I've had deaths in my family recently, and that I've experienced what that does to the dynamic of a family and how it can change it and how it really just shakes things up. You know, I could just relate to this book so much. So this book came out at the right time, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I could very much relate to the main character. That might be unique to me. I loved it. I loved Sam, and of course his accent. Like, some people complain that Sam is too perfect, but I don't know. Sometimes you just need the perfect guy, and he wasn't perfect, but he kind of was, and he's the kind of guy every girl wants. You know, he like does the right thing, he says the right thing, and he's genuine, just a genuinely good guy. And so we're following Gigi as she's facing her family and kind of facing her past, and we kind of find out why she got sent away to boarding school, what happened with Oliver, why they don't really talk to their family anymore. And there's a lot of reveals now that they're adults that's changing the dynamic of their family and changing their relationships. And then meanwhile, there's this chemistry developing between Sam and Gigi, but it's forbidden because Sam is Oliver's sponsor, number one. So, and then Oliver and Gigi are like best siblings, you know? And so Gigi and Sam are like Oliver's people, his like only two people that he can count on. Those are his family. Gigi can tell that Sam means a lot to Oliver. So there's this kind of forbidden love aspect. Again, are you noticing a theme? I really like the forbidden love aspect. Like, of course, when something isn't supposed to happen, it's that much more exciting when it does. So essentially, Sam and Gigi end up sneaking around throughout this entire process while they're home and trying to hide it from Oliver, and things just get really complex. There is a lot of character development, but there's also a lot of plot that keeps the book really interesting. Anyway, I ended up really, really enjoying it. It did not give me that 5-star feeling, but it was excellent. I would highly recommend it. Loved the writing. I love Jessa's writing. I annotated the book. I gave it 4.75 stars. It was a very good book. After that, I read The Ministry of Time. The Ministry of Time is a time travel book, which I immediately gravitated towards because I love anything about like portals or time travel, anything with time manipulation. In this book, we are living in a future society where they have figured out how to bring people back from another time, like from the past. And so systematically they have an agency that is selecting certain people from the past for very specific reasons and bringing them back to the future, which is like their present day, in order to adapt. You know, people are coming like from like the early 1800s to like 2024, 2025. Obviously, it's very shocking. There's been a lot of developments in that time. So they have a buddy that's called their bridge. And their bridge basically like lives with them, I think, for a year and helps them adapt to modern life. So we're following one particular man who has been brought back from the 1800s. And prior to coming back, he was a sailor. He was on a long voyage that actually became lost at sea. It was actually like a really famous shipwreck. That is true, like is historically accurate. I think was kind of some of the inspiration for her story. And so we're going back in time to where this character is living in his own time on the ship during the wreckage and showing and like facing everything that they faced. They end up like in Alaska with the native people there. It's cold, they're starving, people are dying, they're trying to survive, you know, winter temperatures on an ice cap. So we're kind of following his past story and where he came from. And then we're following current day with the bridge, and we're getting to know like a little bit about her story, where she's from, what she's like, and the dynamic kind of between them, which is really interesting. The bridge and the person they bring forward are never supposed to have like a relationship outside of being, you know, like their mentor. But feelings start to develop between the bridge and the sailor. And so we're kind of following the development of their relationship while we're learning more about this program that was developed by the Ministry of Time. So they call it the Ministry, the agency of bringing people back. Pretty soon, our bridge, our main character, she starts to question what the ministry is doing, why they are doing it, if it's ethical. You know, she's seen firsthand how it has affected people and how it's changing time and changing the world. And as we know, these agencies never like whistleblowers. They don't like people questioning them. And so her questioning the agency starts to put her in danger and starts to put him in danger. And so we're following that story as she's unraveling the mission of the Ministry of Time and whether the agency is good or bad, and whether or not what they're doing is right, if there is a right or wrong, if it's subjective. These are the kinds of questions the author is asking. I felt like the book definitely was answering the question of, even if we can, should we? So even though technology has advanced and we may have the option to do certain things in life or in the world, it doesn't necessarily mean that we should just because we can. That there's always consequences for our actions and everything we do, and that we need to think about those consequences and think about the impact of our actions and the decisions that we're making as we go forward. So I really did enjoy it. I found it really intriguing. It's very complex. You definitely have to pay attention when you're reading this book. It's, you know, there are many times I was like, wait, what's going on? And I had to like rewind and re-listen if I was multitasking or whatever. So just know that if you're going to read it, it needs to be a book that you can't get distracted with if you want to get the full effect of the story. Overall, I gave it 4.25. I really enjoyed it. And then the last book that I completed was Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. And this is a standalone book that takes place in the Crowns of Nyaxia world. And our main character was inducted into this like sisterhood as a child who was an orphan. And when she committed herself to this like cult, they took her eyesight, and for the rest of her life, she is walked around with like a blindfold on, like with a piece of cloth like tied around her eyes. And so no one's ever seen her eyes. She can't see. But even though she can't see physically with her eyes, she's been very well trained by this like sisterhood cult. And she is a seer. And so she can't physically see, but she has this magical ability to see the future and to see things around her, basically like to dream. And because she doesn't have her eyesight, she has heightened other senses, and she's very good at interpreting the world around her physically and what's going on, even though she can't see with her eyes. She's assigned to a mission to assassinate the vampire conqueror, and she infiltrates the city where he is and starts to kind of do recon work. And as she learns more about the people that she's with and the vampire conqueror himself, she starts to question whether this sisterhood that she's a part of is a good thing. So as she infiltrates the land to complete this assassination, she runs into some people that she knew as a child, and she starts to gather intel that makes her question whether she's on the right side, whether the sisterhood cult that she's a part of, if they really are the good guys and this kingdom, you know, this ruler over here is the bad guy, or perhaps she's been on the wrong side the whole time. And of course, you know, there's feelings that develop, there's a romance that develops, and again, it's forbidden love. So obviously that's a trope that I enjoy. I didn't do that on purpose, and I don't always know that about these books, but it's definitely apparent that when there's a forbidden love trope happening, I tend to enjoy the book, because they also tend to be slow burns. And when you have a forbidden love, because it's forbidden, you're very slow to get into it, right? Like they're not easily convinced because it's forbidden. So I feel like the forbidden love and the slow burn kind of go hand in hand, and that's, I think, why I love it so much. Anyway, the final book that I will mention was on my TBR, and it was The Fury by Alex McCoughney. He wrote The Silent Patient, which I absolutely loved. I loved that book. That book was amazing. But I started this book and I just couldn't get into it. It's one of those books where they break the fourth wall, and sometimes that works for me. But in this case, it didn't. It was so distracting that I couldn't even like follow the story. I couldn't get into it. And maybe it's just because I have ADHD and I get distracted really easily. But the way that it's written, I couldn't handle it. I didn't get very far into it before I was just like super frustrated and feeling like I had no clue what was going on. And by that point, I just wasn't interested. So I DNF'd it, and I likely won't go back to it. It's just not a style of storytelling that worked for me. I'll definitely be interested in picking up his other books because I love The Silent Patient, and that was written in a different style, but this style wasn't for me. So I DNF'd it, but it might be for you. And I've seen really good things about it, so you'll have to decide for yourself. All in all, I had a pretty dang good reading month. The lowest book I read was a 3-star. I had 1 3-star, and then every other book I read was 4 stars or higher. And I had 4 5-star books, 4 5-star reads, which is pretty good. And then I had 6 reads that were 4.5 or 4.75. So 10 out of my 14 reads, or 13, 10 out of my 13 books read total were rated 4.5 or higher. And 4 of them were 5 stars. So it was an excellent reading month. And I do have a reading vlog coming up. It'll be the next video I post after this, where I'm reading nothing but new releases. So you'll hear more about some of these books. Let me know if you enjoyed this. Let me know what kind of wrap up you enjoy. Do you like a lot of details, just a little bit of details? Do you just want my ratings? What kind of things do you want to know? Do you like to know the premise? Do you like to know a full synopsis? I'm still working on my style and kind of template for these videos, and I would love to have your input because I just want to talk about everything, but we don't have enough time. And so I want to make sure that I'm providing the most valuable content for you. If you aren't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button, like, comment. It's a free way to support me and my channel if you enjoy my content. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with me. If you're here and you don't know what to say, why don't you drop a crown? Because I kind of really started reading more romantasies again and getting more back into my fantasy books. I hope you guys are having a fabulous day or night wherever you are, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.